African Media Initiative's business blog discusses topics pertinent to media businesses on the African continent with business leaders and thought leaders to look at trends, identify opportunities, and examine possible solutions to the many challenges facing media organizations as they try to navigate today's rapidly changing media landscape. Jay Naidoo, chairman of the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition and a former Minister of Communication in Nelson Mandela's administration in South Africa, talks about how media can best play its role in Africa's development. He also talks about how Africa can better leverage the attention from foreign investors and how Telecom has become a game changer.
Well, I'm Jay Naidoo. I'm South African. I spent most of my life as a social activist in the anti-apartheid struggle, became a leader of the trade union movement and the largest federation of unions called COSATU. I then went to government and was the Minister of Communications in the mid-90s under Nelson Mandela. And then I left, I became an entrepreneur, but I also remained committed to development, and today I'm full-time giving my time to worthy causes, amongst which is I chair a global foundation that is a public-private partnership tackling malnutrition that faces 2 billion people in the world, and that really was incubated by the Gates Foundation and Kofi Annan when he was Secretary General. And that's the main thing that I do today, tackling the challenge of malnutrition and hunger in the world. But I also sit on the board of the Mo Ibrahim Foundation because I'm very committed to deepening governance in Africa. And Mo, the foundation has is at that cutting edge of unpacking what governance means. And for me, it's fundamentally the right of citizens of Africa to have quality education, quality health, to have safety and security, and for them to benefit from the development of Africa. Well, I think media is a very important reflection of the aspirations, the hope, the frustrations of the citizenry. It is, in a sense, an interface between government and society. And so an honest, ethical media is fundamentally important in deepening democracy. And so I see a very important role for media. There are bad media companies and bad journalists as well, that have been responsible for some horrific violence in places like Rwanda. So I think a strong, sustainable, ethical media that is important in deepening democracy, and having a free and independent media with a commitment to investigative journalism that is based on data, empirical evidence. That is very important for building Africa and its development. They have to get their houses in order. In the sense, a commitment to quality journalism, to a code of conduct that makes sure that they're reflecting the facts and not sensationalizing the news is very important. I think the commitment of media owners to training, to develop the type of rigorous investigative journalism is very important. One of our challenges of media, not just in Africa but the world, is what I call microwave journalism. The tremendous pressure being put on journalists to meet deadlines, and the way in which there's been a juniorization of newsrooms, particularly in traditional media. But I think media, to be successful going forward, has to understand and fuse the online and offline media. And increasingly, as there's a penetration of mobile telephony, as those technological platforms become broadband-based, people are going to be accessing the information largely through digital means. So understanding where media is going in the next few decades, to understand that it is driven increasingly by demands of consumers and information coming out of consumers, the interactivity of those platforms, are all very important for media going forward, to attract the type of investment that makes them sustainable businesses, but also valuable parts of delivering the democracy that our citizens are entitled to. Well, consider the wealth of Africa. I think our biggest challenge is we don't value our assets, our people, for example. The diaspora that leaves the continent are highly skilled. They're in great demand in Europe and North America. But we lose them because we are unable to provide the opportunities and the guarantees that people who are incredibly mobile need. Quality education, quality health, safety and security are very important needs. So one of the things we've got to do is make sure we value our people more and keep our intellectual capital on our continent. The second is that if you look at the wealth, the mineral wealth of Africa, 1/3 of the mineral wealth that fuels the global economy comes from Africa. If you look at arable land, 60% of the remaining arable land in the world is in Africa. But we do not leverage these assets. We act as 54 countries. We weaken our bargaining position. And I think those are things that we've got to fundamentally address, the way in which we can, in a sense, exploit the tensions that exist between bigger powers in the world, whether that's China, India, Brazil, United States, or Europe. And to make sure that in the process of them taking our wealth, our natural resources, that we're also getting something in return. We are promoting entrepreneurial opportunities for our own people. We are building African enterprises. So I think that it requires a new paradigm, it requires a new thinking of saying, we will work with whatever power there is in the world, whatever company there is in the world. We will meet the needs of the world's food security, but we'll do it in such a way that we build African enterprises, we address African food insecurity, and we address the challenges of African development. And that requires a new thinking, a new way of looking at our political engagement with the rest of the world. And for that we need new leaders that are prepared to work from private sector, from public sector, from civil society, in a way that puts the citizen of Africa at the center stage. Fundamentally, I was the Minister of Telecoms under President Nelson Mandela in the mid-90s. When we gathered as ministers of telecom in Africa, there were less cell phones in sub-Saharan Africa than the city of New York. Today we are the fastest growing market, 500 million mobile phones and growing at a tremendous rate. It's the most pervasive technological platform in Africa. But what we're seeing today is how does that platform create opportunities, economic opportunities? And what we're seeing, particularly in a country like Kenya, is the way in which that platform is being harnessed to deliver services that the citizens of Kenya want. And that has been driven in a partnership between organizations like the African Media Initiative, supporting the big media houses, working in partnership with them, with institutions like the World Bank and Open Institute, with institutions like government, in order to create the type of economic development that is knowledge-driven and that is data-based. And I think that's where Africa must see its ability. In my time in mid-90s as a Minister of Communication, we had the opportunity to go from no infrastructure to the most modern digital infrastructure by imposing and agreeing norms and standards. Today, when we're talking about how do we use these platforms, this backbone, the increasing access there is to broadband, we need to come back to this issue of how do we cooperate, particularly as governments, working with business, working with civil society, working with initiatives like AMI to create the right environment that allows young people to create their own jobs, create their own livelihoods and their own enterprises.